Welcome, everyone, to this latest Keeping It Together podcast. My name's Dave Burke, and
I'm Rachel Broughton.
well done. Isn't that brilliantly queued up? And Keeping It Together, we try to support people in Christian leadership, any kind of Christian leadership, with their own mental health, their own mental well-being, and also with the kind of stuff that will help others with their well-being as well. And that might well be technical stuff, like we have a friend, Hilary Johnson, who's a consultant psychiatrist, and she talks with us with Rachel actually, about the basics, depression, anxiety, trauma, things like that. And we often have conversations like this one we're about to have between me and Rachel. And we very often bring guests in who really know what they're talking about, as opposed to just us. And all of these things you can find on YouTube or on Spotify. And underneath this, in YouTube and Spotify, there'll be a website address that you can just have a look at to find out more information. We also organise a free retreat twice a year at Shepherd's Dean in Northumberland, and it's brilliant. And we've got some funding so we can make it free. That's what we do. So, Rachel, you've been thinking a bit about this phrase, "I am the gate," one of Jesus' famous sayings in John chapter 10. Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah. Well, in the Gospel of John, he has these "I am" statements, which I am the good shepherd, I am the bread of life, I am the light of the world. He has all of these kinds of statements, and the one that's really drawn a lot of curiosity for me is this "I am the gate," because it's not one that we talk about fairly regularly. It's not one that maybe I would go to pastorally as a first line of defense or comfort for people, is "I am the gate." But Jesus, it's obviously pretty significant. It's obviously important. So I've just been thinking a little bit about that, and was kind of drawn to it, and drawn to, well, what is really happening in this passage, and who is Jesus speaking to, and what's going on. So if we why don't we read it? It's in John 10.
Yep.
And right at the beginning, you see who he is talking to. He's talking to the Pharisees. He says, "Very truly I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. And when he's brought them, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they'll run away from him because they do not recognize the stranger's voice." And Jesus used this figure of speech, but the Pharisees didn't understand. I draw great comfort from that the Pharisees didn't understand. Because when I read that first time through, I don't know about you, Dave.
Yeah.
It's not jumping out. But then in verse 7 it says, "Therefore Jesus said again, 'Very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers. The sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate.'" So he says that twice. "They will come, or whoever enters through me will be saved. They'll come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full."
Right.
Such a famous passage, isn't it? That particularly that John 10:10. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy.
It is. It is. And I mean, you talked about, you read it and you don't quite know what it means. I think John's summaries of Jesus are so concentrated. It's a little bit like an OXO cube, isn't it? All that kind of intensity of flavour in a tiny little space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so to understand it a bit, I was kind of thinking about the context of it. Well, what does that mean? Because when I think of a gate, I often think of those electric ones that you press, or like something that opens up, something really probably quite steel and bolted and shut.
Yes.
But that's not really the kind of gate that we're talking about. That's not the context that they have for this. And what they actually had is these kinds of, a sheep pen would have been formed probably by bushes or rocks or things that they could just use to form some kind of enclosure. And the gate was actually the shepherd who would lie across the opening of that space that the sheep would enter and come in and out of.
So he's not talking about a door.
He's not.
In a wooden physical. He's talking about a person who lies across the entrance. I never even thought that.
It's quite amazing, really, when you think of that, because Jesus is that good shepherd who lays his life down for the sheep. He lies in that doorway as a protector, and also as someone who invites. And I love this idea that he talks about. The sheep kind of come and go and they graze and whatever, but as soon as he calls them, they're in. They're in that pen, and he's lying across that doorway, to that gap in the fence, if you like, to protect them and to guard the entrance. And another way of getting in would be to go over the walls. Now, the walls, as I've already just said, are not well-constructed fences that you can climb over. It's more likely shrubbery or rocks, sharp things that they've just kind of grabbed and put round. And there's a lot of scrambling involved in that. If you climb over something, that's pure effort, isn't it? That's you've got to figure out your route. You've got to figure out how you're going to go over. It's a lot of effort and strength. I'm not a big climber. It's not one of my strengths. But it just sounds like a lot of effort. And I wonder whether there's a message in this about Jesus saying, you can strive and you can try and you can climb, but it's going to steal from you. It's going to rob you of this life in all of its fullness and its abundance that I have promised you. And if you just come through the gate, if you come to that good shepherd and you come in through me, Jesus says, then you will have life in all of its fullness and you won't be robbed. And I think as well, when we put so much striving, not only are we robbing ourselves of that abundant life, but we're setting other people up around us for failure. We rob other people of that abundance, that life, that thriving that's promised to us by Jesus.
What you're saying reminds me of a phrase Paul uses in Romans 5, that by faith we come into this grace in which we now stand. And I imagine that as being, there's a spiritual space we occupy when we trust in Christ. And life in that space is full. Yeah. And Jesus is doing exactly the same. This is the sheep pen where he is. Just outside that window, if you just walk a few hundred yards, we've got a field full of sheep. And they're kept in by a dry stone wall. Now, I've seen these sheep skip over the wall. When they want to do it, they can do it. Yeah. They just don't bother. Yeah. Because they know what side their bread is buttered on. They've got everything they need. They don't need to be the other side of the wall. And I often think of that in connection with this sheep pen idea. Yeah. This is the place to be. It's not a prison. It's the place of abundance. It's the place of life.
And I think we all know, I don't know about you, but many of us know people in our lives who are striving to find that peace. And like you talk about, sheep can absolutely get out of that pen if they want to. But when they know they're safe, why would they go anywhere else? The disciples say that later on, don't they, to Jesus? They say, well, where else would we go? Where else would we go? And there is that sense that when we're in that space, that spiritual space, like you said with Jesus, where else do we need to be? Where else would we go? But we all know people who are striving and trying to climb to find some sort of peace, some sort of safety, some sort of belonging. And really, Jesus is saying, I am the gate.
Yes.
Come to me. And when I've thought about that, the more I've kind of meditated on this idea, the more my eyes have been opened to so many stories throughout Scripture where people are striving and they're trying to do things in their own strength. And it's only...
Got an example?
So, well, just in John, there's an example of the paralyzed or the crippled man at the pool of Bethsaida. So you just go back a couple of chapters to John 10, from John 10 to John 5.
Yeah.
And you see this guy lying at the pool. He's been there a number of years. He's been there for a long time. But what's funny about this, and this is why these stories are linked, and you can see it straight away, because in John 5 verse 2 it says there's in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool.
Right, yeah.
So you immediately see a fun link that the author's trying to make here. So John's trying to say, put these two stories together. But you see that here a great number of disabled people, paralyzed people, people with conditions would lie there. And there's this particular man who's been there for 38 years. That's a really significant amount of time to be just there waiting. But there was basically this idea that the pool there, once the water had been stirred up, and it's a curious little passage because verse 4 is not always in our translations, but there's this idea that there was an angel or some sort of deity would come and stir up the waters. And you thought,
so it was a local legend.
this legend that it would happen, and the first person to enter the water would be healed of their ailment. And archaeologists have discovered this. They've kind of gone and found the pool, and they've found not only it's not only a Jewish sacred space, but it's also a pagan sacred space. So this legend has legs somehow. There's some sort of belief that there's something supernatural happens and healing's available to you. But there is a catch. You have to be the first person to get in.
Right, okay. So there's a stampede.
It's a pure stampede. And there's I don't know if many of you watch The Chosen, if that's something that you're into or not, but there's if you watch this episode, it depicts this idea really well. It's just pure every man for himself. And people might have a relative or a friend there to help them into the water. And people are just picking people up and chucking them into the water. And it really gives you this idea of, I don't care how, I don't care who's going to heal me, I don't care which deity it is, I don't care which supernatural being is going to give me what I need, but I'm going to get there. And it's not until Jesus comes to him and says, what do you want? Do you want to be healed?
Yes.
I'm not going to get you in the pool because I am the way. I am the gate. Come to me. It's all can be found in me. And Jesus heals the man. And the Pharisees are not happy because Jesus heals him on the Sabbath. Which again is so interesting because the Sabbath had been, Jesus talks about all these things that are in place to help us to rest. They're supposed the Sabbath is for us. We're not for the Sabbath is for us. This idea that we're not, it's designed to facilitate something for us. And what it's supposed to facilitate is life in abundance, life in flourishing. And that's what Jesus is offering to this man.
As you've been speaking, I've just been thinking about the way Christian faith is depicted in film, on TV, and often in more factual stuff, documentaries and stuff. I think the overwhelming sense in our culture is that Christian faith, particularly religion in general, is about digging yourself out of a hole. That God is kind of passive and waiting for us to earn him. And I've noticed that kind of, I think it's quite an anti-Christian thing, that the Christians are presented as kind of very self-righteous, very bitter, twisted people who've got something wrong with them. And I'm not saying that isn't right sometimes, but it's just that Christian faith is presented as earning something from God. And God is waiting until you do the right thing before you trigger. And Christians sign up to that. I think lots of Christians sign up to it in surprising places, in churches where you wouldn't expect to find that. But, if you do this, then you get that. And that is endemic.
It is.
But that's not what you're saying.
No, and it isn't. And I think as well, particularly in the context of mental health, and I've talked about this a bit with Hilary, this idea that when we're struggling, we have to get ourselves back to level so that then God can meet us. And really, what we're trying to do and what we're trying to talk about constantly is that Jesus is saying all of the time in Scripture, I am the gate, I am the way. You're not going to be able to strive and climb and do all this on your own, and you're not supposed to. And and my peace And this life in all of its fullness is not dependent on you getting in. It's not dependent
Yes.
on
Yeah.
you climbing back to level. And I think that's a really important message for us that we really need
Because
to.
yes, in a mental health context, again, working with folks in some local charities where they're not Christians, they're just keen to help people. Often religion is seen as a complication because that's giving these people something else to worry about. But I am the gate. Jesus is lying across the threshold of the sheep pen. And his message is not to worry.
Yeah, exactly. And all the invitation is to trust. The invitation
Yes.
is just to see him and walk towards him. And to give another example, there's no sense of I'll give you the example. So the other example that I've been thinking about is the example of Cain and Abel, where so Cain, it's his two brothers, famously Adam and Eve's children, and Cain famously kills his brother Abel, and Cain doesn't seem very remorseful in any way, shape or form. In fact, the only thing he gets upset about is the punishment that God gives him. And if we go back to Genesis 4, you'll see what that punishment is. He sends him away. And I'll find it, sorry. What have you done? Cain says, So the punishment is that when you work the ground, it will no longer yield crops for you. You'll be a restless wanderer on the earth. So it's like you haven't got a home properly anymore.
Yeah.
And Cain, this is Cain's only outcry about this whole thing. He says, "My punishment is more than I can bear. You're driving me from my land, and I'll be hidden from your presence. I'll be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." So he's worried that the thing, he's not worried, he's not remorseful about what he's done, but he's worried that what he's done is going to come back on him. And God says, "Not so. Anyone who kills you will suffer vengeance 7 times over." And then the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one who found him would kill him. And then Cain went out and he does his thing. But later he has another son. And it says this curious thing here in verse 17. Cain was then building a city and he named it after his son Enoch. And I'm curious about that because God has promised that he will be a wanderer and that he will be protected. No one's going to kill him. But at some point, Cain stops trusting in God's protection for him and decides to build himself a city. I'm not going to wander anymore. I'm going to set up shop and I'm going to build big walls and I'm going to pull the drawbridge up so no one can get to me and I'm going to bolt it shut. That's what cities are kind of representing in this passage. They're representing making my own protection for myself. And I wonder whether there's this, temptation for us to want to build our own little cities where we're going to protect ourselves and we're going to figure it out and we're going to pull up that drawbridge so that we don't get hurt again or so that we don't let people in, so that we're not vulnerable anymore. And
Yes.
I wonder whether we have an invitation to the gate or the city. And there's a choice constantly for us to consider, are we going to trust the gate, the good shepherd with his life laid down across the threshing floor of that doorway? Are we going to trust the life of the good shepherd? Are we going to trust the gate and come to him and know that it's only through him that we find that John 10:10 promise, that life in all of its fullness? Or are we going to build for ourselves a city where we pull up the drawbridge and we bolt it shut and we don't let anybody in and we figure it all out on our own? And I really, and you see the way of Cain. You see it just cascade into darkness and more and more and more. And we're so trained to think that we need to be independent and we need to figure this all out on our own. And Jesus is saying, but I'm the gate. I'm the way.
Yeah. That Cain story, if Cain took God at his word, the mark of Cain's going to protect him. but he doesn't. And it is interesting, again, in our culture, the mark of Cain is a bit like the black spot in Pirates of the Caribbean. You know, you get the black spot, you're going to die. But the
Yeah.
mark of Cain is a protection, not
Yeah.
a curse.
Yeah.
The curse came before that. The mark of Cain's God reassurance. Just take God at his word and get on with your life. Rest in it, relax in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in the context of what we're talking about in terms of mental health, but also our well-being, you know, when we put the pressure on ourselves to make it on our own, to figure it all out, to get everything sorted, actually that leads in the way of Cain to more pressure and more anxiety. And
Yeah, yeah.
and what we can do is look to the gate, and that's the road to peace and to abundant life and flourishing.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's been fun.
It's good.
There you go.